welcome to another time on Book Splash on Splash FM 105.5 Ibadan. It is the platform for book lovers and literary enthusiasts to rub minds with writers and revel in the beauty of books. I am Michael Olatunbosun. Let's go the way of poetry today. And the work on the table today is a chapbook titled The Arrival of Rain, a collection of 35 poems written by Adedayo Agarau and published in 2020 by Vegetarian Alcoholic Press. The author, Adedayo Agarau, is a poet, a documentary photographer, and a graduate of human nutrition. He was runner-up of the Savage Poetry Prize in 2019 and the Eriata Oribabo Poetry Prize in 2017. His poems have been published in various magazines, anthologies, and online, including Jaladad Africa, 8 Poems, Headway Lit, Nitrogen House, among others. Adedayo Agarau curates and edits a Nigerian poetry anthology, and his chapbook, Origin of Names, was selected by Chris Abani and Kwame Dawes for African Poetry Book Fund 2020. His other work includes For Boys Who Went. The collection, The Arrival of Rain, is a slim book with a fat melding of melancholy and a pervasive echo of emptiness and self-searching. In the collection, the poet persona seems heartbroken as he is once again left to lick his wounds of unreciprocated love. The poet draws upon the imagery of a broken door to describe the forlorn feeling one has as a result of repeated rejection. This is the sense that pervades the first poem in the work, Look How Far I Have Come. In this collection, the poet persona is somewhat unsettled and his mind befuddled with too many questions begging for clarity, like a distressed moon in a blank sky. In a review by Michael Chukwudera, the poet persona is described as a voice haunted by loneliness and quaking to untenable emotions, assembles himself to curb the demons he has identified. He shows an attempt to understand himself in the first portrait of me as Adedayo. Let's assume the body is an estrangement, a beach house washed up in a sea, the tender waves calling, calling, calling. Let's assume the body is a little flower, praying for the sun, pleading to be left alone in the wind, alone with the stars in the night sky, alone with the grief trapped in the ship of his own sea. Let's assume the body is a departure. It is in this same fashion that he writes the poems as portraits, as a medium of self-seeking, a poet trying to unravel what bothers and torments him. The poem, Untitled, is remarkable in its performance of paradoxes, in its tendency to elude deeper meanings beyond the line. The paradoxes of unhappiness and helium balloons, and of sharing grief with the home keeper, and yet never being at home to losses. They are laid out well. The most striking, perhaps, is of the mother being covered by a god betrayed by a sign of love. It brings to mind something about love, its power to redeem and disarm. It's even more haunting that the poem projects grief when it is really just love. In many ways, this could be said of the collection, The Arrival of Rain. Most of what it explores, self-seeking, empathy, heartbreak, spirituality, center on deep intimacy, love. The Arrival of Rain explores self-discovery over an expanse of torment, heartbreak, empathy, loneliness, and grief, all with a tinge of spirituality under the shelter of love that keeps trying despite being knocked out. The most powerful, however, are the 8 self-portrait poems wrestling with loss, specifically the loss of his father, a motif that serves as the gravel and bone in this collection. The program is Book Splash on Splash FM 105.5 Ibadan, and the book for today is a collection of poems, The Arrival of Rain, written by Adedayo Agarau. The final portrait poem is aptly titled The Fifth Portrait as Adedayo, or as just any other child from this country. In the final act of self-love and allusion to his title, Agarau asks us to water the tree when we find the boy. We are left both parched and satiated. We wonder who the boy is, how it is that he can still be missing, and what role we have played in the search. We ask if the boy is Nigeria, if his father is the bird parched on his tongue, or if his body is still running. In this work, the author's knack for the exploration of the urgency of absence is perpetually demonstrated. Listen to him in this poem. I saddled God into my body, lift my mouth up like a flint, My wings will be a safe house, a nest held together by old shoelaces of my unwanted dreams. Give me a new thing to cry about, and I do not mean love or my father's disappearance or my mother's tears gathering to form an ocean. I mean that if demons are pestles pounding the heads of newborns, let me be chased out of my sleep. Let me be my father's body, unsettled, outcast, tired of everywhere, unable to sit, unable to love his past, unable to settle himself into the ferry my mother still wakes to the hurt of his hands. Give me a new thing to cry about, not my father's despicable smile or my mother constantly asking God to guide his feet home. In the work, the metaphor of the sea, of water, is explored by the sense of flotation. In fact, the poet finds himself by the river, and the accompanying imagery is that of drowning depression. For the poet, death lurks in the corner. Along with this sense of light-headed flotation is the metaphor of rejection, an irredeemable reject in a highly judgmental world. Ultimately, the poems in this 46-page collection all draw the reader along the trajectory of urgent journey of rejection to drowning depression, to weightlessness, and to hope and freshness. The author is a deeply reflective writer who perpetually fascinates the reader with his powerful deployment of potent metaphors to carry home his message. In this conversation, Adedayo Agarau tells me why he wrote the work and his key thought in the collection, The Arrival of Rain. Dayo, welcome to Book Splash.
Thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here.
Okay, you've been here before, I know. We discussed your book, For Boys Who Went.
Yes, For Boys Who Went, we did.
This is The Arrival of Rain. So tell me what occasioned this work.
Okay, so I wasn't exactly in a good place when I started writing The Arrival of Rain in 2019. Well, I was supposed to publish a work. I forgot the title now actually, but I was supposed to publish it with an American press, and they just jilted me. They didn't get back to me. It was already in the press, so I think their press folded up. And at that time, I had a friend who died. At that time, I had someone who broke up with me. At that time, life happened basically, so I just had to, it happened that I started to write actually, so made a collection.
Could that be why you have melancholy written all over the work?
Well, as I turned 50, some people called me a melancholic poet, so I guess. But then there are substances of hope too. There are actually.
Arrival of Rain. It's a 46-page work. Tell me, the melancholy written all over the work, you said, well, there's also the hope and the rest of it.
Okay.
I could also sense from your work the search by the poet persona, the search for self. It looks like the self, the person, was lost, and the poet was trying to find identity within the maze of confusion, of grief, of rejection, and the rest of it. It looks like a suicidal note for me.
Well, no, it's not. It's absolutely not a suicidal note. Poetry, in the actual sense, is a quest. As every other form of art, poetry itself gives you the platform to ask questions, whether it's an intrapersonal conversation or it's interpersonal. Poetry allows you to question yourself, allows you to question other people. So in the body of work, what I did was that I add an entire space to myself to ask if this is actually me, to question using the poetry, using my poems, to checkmate if this is the life. If I am walking through my personal experiences as a poet, or I'm walking through my personal experiences as a person. So there's a shift between the personal and the writer. And then of course there's a point where reality comes into play in the works actually. So of course, we do these things.
In this poem, look how far have come. You wrote here, broken every time the door opens or is banged against your face. You can count your losses, but do you remember My name? I'm with you inside the room. The ground is littered with pictures of girls who do not love you back. What better way to die than to drown in your tears, and while you watch their shadows evaporate into space through your broken window? I whisper, Monifere, but you do not hear. Ololufemi, your wound is open like my door. Femi, 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 I'm still here, mending bridges that won't stand. You have a picture of rejection here. Yeah, someone who said, absolutely. I don't do.
Well, in that case, it wasn't I don't do. It was that, adulthood would come at you with force. Okay, so this is a story. I was in a relationship with someone, and then we were into it, and then one day it was fine, a beautiful day. We're in the conversation, and then they started to cry, and they said they do not love me enough. I mean, that was
do not love you enough.
I mean,
wow.
They do not love me enough to be in a relationship with me. Oh wow. That is the height of rejection. I mean, of course, it had enough power to bring for the poem. I actually felt like I was subtle with the poem. Actually, I felt like I was so subtle with the poem. But there's no how you would go forcefully against someone you actually still have a thing for. However bad they were to you. So yes, that's like the story behind the poem.
Let me look at this word baptism. That's the poem.
Okay.
12 candlesticks bounded by the grip of your hands. Your knees narrowed into the marrow of silt. Fire. 7 times, right?
Yes.
So you have fire. For my own reading of this poem,
okay,
it brings to the fore the hypocrisy of religion.
Thank you very much.
All over this work, you seem to have a cane for religion.
No, I do not have a cane for religion. I have a cane for personalities in religion, for people who stand to dismantle the concept of belief. Of course, as it were, we as humans, Jesus had to come in front of a person so as to show that he was an example. So, and then when he was going, he said that people should go into the world. So he came as an example to stand as an example to people who would be examples. So I mean, if you are going to do anything right, you should do it right. If you are going to do anything at all, and then in places of religion, we would find people who have to sleep with girls, who have to rape girls, who, in fact, boys. We have men who sleep with boys. I personally have a friend whose priest actually sexually molested him as a young boy, and this priest is quite a popular person. So I mean, that is the essence of poetry. Actually, poetry gets you to ask questions, to break bridges, to, as people would rightly say, to break tables. So yeah.
Okay, still book Splash on Splash FM. The Arrival of Rain is the book. Adedayo Agarau is the author. Tell me the story behind the production of this work. I know it's a chapbook.
Okay.
And you seem to be a specialist in chapbooks. Why?
I'm not ready for full length. I still have grad school to go. I'm actually working on a full length, but my focus is to teach poetry at some point.
Okay.
To study poetry and then teach poetry at some point. So a brief story. I got into to a school in the US this year, fully funded and all. But while I started my registration, I had started my registration as a March 15th. I was supposed to turn in my registration. So on the 14th, I sent in my credentials, which I had formally notified them of my credentials. I have HND in nutrition and dietetics. So after that, they sent me my letter. I got everything. So I think a week later, the international admission officer wrote me that that they're having an issue that is checking in with other schools to see if HND is equivalent to USC's BSc. That is where I knew that I think I have a problem. So we went back and forth. We were arguing. I was sending them. I wrote the Ministry of Educations and all. I didn't get any answer. So I mean, my future was hanging on that loose. It was hanging on that fulcrum that I have to go to grad school at some point. I got the scholarship to study at this school, but I can't go because there's no notes. They keep saying that they've broken the space between HND and BSc, but of course the dichotomy is still obvious.
Okay, we just hear hear about it.
We just hear about it. It's not in practice. So I mean, that is exactly what affected my own admission currently, because they have to retract my scholarship, they have to retract my admission. So I'll try again. I'll try another school next year. I mean, this coming window. So that's it. But then, of course, I wrote this chapbook because I mean, I need to keep churning out a body of work to people who read me, to people who are interested in the conversations that I bring to the table. And, you know, I feel like I'm not exactly ready for a full length yet.
But you've won awards. Published, across, you have been published across, online and the rest of it.
Yes, but
anybody will say I'm ready to publish full length.
Anybody would, but I feel like I would have a better chance at a full length if I'm writing from an institution. Say there are people who write from institutions, from schools whose school actually sponsored their book.
Oh yes.
So I mean I feel like, okay, yes, I have conversations I have things to say. I'm currently working on poems about my dead grandmother and the relationship we had and the concept of absence. People who come into your life and then leave at some point. So I feel like these are important things to say, but I'm not ready to let it out. Okay,
you are a graduate of human nutrition.
Yes.
I'm interested in your trajectory in the arts world.
Okay.
I know you started writing professionally, officially in 2013, right?
Yeah, I did.
And you'd like to ask the question: what is the connection? Where did you find the arts in you?
Okay, this is one of the stories that I barely tell, but my grandfather, Alhaji Agarau, was friends with Alhaji Oshola. They grew up together on the same street. So my grandfather was a songwriter. He wrote songs for King Sunny Ade, he wrote songs for Barrister and some other top guns. I didn't meet him. I only met him when I was a baby. I mean, I was born in the year that he died.
Okay.
So, but I mean,
you heard stories.
I heard stories. So he was a spectacular writer, and I'm guessing now that it was probably passed down the generation. My dad was the one who transcribed for my grandfather. My dad would always tell me that boy, you know how these things. But I started writing in 2013 after finding I met with Razak Malik online, and then I joined the Facebook community, the writing community on Facebook. I started reading works of Niyi Oshundare, started reading works of JP Clark, and then I started reading works of Kautava on Facebook and some other friends, and Razak, of course. And in 2013, officially, on the 1st of 2013, I think 2 days before, Samson Kugogo Uresiri asked that I try a poem, and I did. I think African Boy was the title. And then on the 1st of January 2013, he published the work on WR, Word Rhymes and Reading. And I showed my dad. My dad said, okay. And then, I mean, that was it. That was just my story. That was how I started writing. And that same year, I won my first small competition. The next year, I won the Paul Student Poetry Prize. And I've been doing my bits.
So from small competition to a big competition, then a bigger one.
Of course, bigger, of course.
Wow.
Keeps getting bigger.
I'd like you to read from your work. The book is The Arrival of Rain. The author, Adedayo Agarau, is here. Let's hear from the poet himself.
I would read this poem that I wrote when one Daniel Usman was killed in Kogi State during the election in last year.
Yeah.
Okay, so what it means to be freed by your country for Daniel Usman. Daniel, 19, opens his head for a dozen bullets. The bulletin says his body is a prize. A man shows the president his prey. A man takes the street into his mouth, turns a rose into a coin. A boy's head becomes a headline. Democracy ties a knot with silence. The sun sinks beneath the tongue. The moon wedges itself behind the clouds. The boy will someday rise into a revolution. Men revolting against a country that asks for heads instead of thumbs, blood instead of nuts. This is my country, a jungle of men breaking out of night. Somewhere in Lagos, a man says the only way to power is showing what you have killed. Says in this country, the body is nothing but a count, a score. Another boy falls back into his father's hands, dead in Ibadan. His mother boils with fury. A field of revenge rises in her eyes. This is how we cast our innocence in a ballot of anguish. How birds burn the chimney in the sky. My country is ocean's exist wounds, and to be free means to be caged in a coffin, to ride home as a boy, 19, with trumpets and despair, thinking, this country, my country, a city under siege, served my father a plate of my dead body. Thank you.
Wow, that's a very deep one. A country that is asking for your blood rather than your thumb.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
But it's so deep. And you have, in this work, in this poem that you read particularly, you have, really, thrown up the issues that many Nigerians also have in their minds about a country that rejects its own.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the functions of poetry is that it's a form of protest. We use, as every form of art, of course, we use poetry, particularly for poets, to protest about status quo, to join conversations. On Twitter, I have a bunch of friends, Jericho Brown and some other black poets from America who are currently writing about how they are bringing up conversations about the neglect, the racism that is charged toward the black race in America and everywhere in the world. So I mean that is a protest. In this poem, I particularly had to write this poem because this death got at me. I was following the election that day, and I was seated in the room. I was watching the news, and it just popped up that a guy has been. And then I saw it on Facebook. A close friend is this guy's friend, and I had to protest. I had to lend my voice to this loss because it's. And then one of the things that I keep saying is that this country needs a reform. Every portion, every bit of this country needs a reform. For example, I live around New Garage, and every time I pass through Orita to New Garage, I'm always scared that the police can pull me over and ask, because they've done that to me like 5 times, 6 times now. They pull me over to ask that what do I carry, to check my account balance, to check my mail. And of course with guns, they all you to the police station. It's scary. We're in a country that actually scares us ourselves. We do not feel safe. When we go out to vote, and then what goes back home is the body of the person that has gone to vote. That is not exactly, that's a country, of course, but a country that needs reform. So yes,
a country that needs reform. This is coming from a poet who is a socially conscious person and someone who is so deep. One thing that I've observed in your work, I'm not sure whether I am correct, is that you are deliberately making yourself difficult as a writer. Maybe you've drunk from the ponds of people like Wole Soyinka.
Oh my God, no. No, sir. Poetry allows you to speak the way you want, not to be difficult. Of course, I deem myself as a very understandable poet. I sincerely, I deem myself as a very understandable poet. But it's just important that for every artist, you have to put your sauce. For every culinary, you have to add your own recipe. So you have to have your own recipe rather. Metaphors are very important. They help you drive home your points better. And then especially if you are writing, why it might seem like it's difficult is because if you are writing from a point of view, from your own personal experience, it might be difficult for someone who has not gone through that to share in your opinion of a poem. So I'm not a difficult voice, please.
Okay, so tell me your very key message in this work. What exactly it is you want readers to extract from your work?
Okay. Arrival of Rain is both a personal collection and a socially conscious book. It entirely explores the concept of absence. How one day we are here and the other day we are either eternally gone or we are gone for a while. And when I was writing this book, it was a coping mechanism for me. So I mean, and I had to title this book The Arrival of Rain, because that seemed like the biggest ounce of hope that could come from the book, because I do not want to, of course, preach hopelessness. When rain comes, of course, there would be fruitfulness, and then after rain, sunshine will come.
But before rain, there is a dark sky.
Of course, that's the exact metaphor I'm trying to. So the book is the dark sky. The title is the coming of rain.
Dayo Agarau.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
That was my conversation with Adedayo Agarau, the author of the work The Arrival of Rain, a collection of poems. I hope you liked it. If you did, please join me for another edition of Book Splash, same time on Splash FM next Saturday. Thanks for listening, and thanks to my sound manager, Victor Daudu. In case you have a comment or query, please send me a message on 0805-699-8676 or email Olatunbosun at splashfm1055.com. Please follow me on Twitter at Mike Tunbosun. I am Michael Olatunbosun. Please read a book today.